The rain hammered against the windows of the penthouse as Marcus Chen stood alone, staring at the city lights below. 20 years. It had taken him 20 years to reach this moment, and now that it was here, he felt nothing but the cold weight of purpose. His phone buzzed. A single message, "It's done." Marcus closed his eyes, and the memories came flooding back. Memories he had buried deep but never forgotten. 20 years earlier, Marcus had been just another kid from Brooklyn, the son of Chinese immigrants who ran a small restaurant in Chinatown. His father, David Chen, was a gentleman who believed in hard work and honesty. His mother, Lily, was the heart of their family, always smiling, always hopeful. The restaurant, Chen's Garden, was their entire world. It wasn't fancy, but it was theirs. The food was authentic, made with recipes passed down through generations. The neighborhood loved them. Business was good enough to pay the bills and save a little for Marcus's college fund. Then Richard Blackwood appeared. Blackwood was a real estate developer with a reputation for getting what he wanted, no matter the cost. He wanted the entire block where Chen's Garden stood, wanted to tear it down and build luxury condos. Most of the shop owners had already sold out, tempted by his generous offers or intimidated by his threats. But David Chen refused. "This is our home," he told Blackwood when the developer visited their restaurant. "My family built something here. It's not for sale." Blackwood smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Everything is for sale, Mr. Chen. It's just a matter of finding the right price. Then you'll never find it," David replied firmly. Marcus, who was 16 at the time, watched from the kitchen. He saw the flash of rage in Blackwood's eyes before the man turned and walked out. He should have known then that this wasn't over. A week later, health inspectors showed up. Suddenly, Chen's Garden was failing inspections it had passed for 15 years. Violations appeared out of nowhere, violations that would cost thousands to fix. Then the suppliers started backing out of contracts, claiming they couldn't deliver to them anymore. Regular customers began receiving anonymous calls warning them about health hazards at the restaurant. David fought back. He hired a lawyer, reported the harassment, did everything by the book. But Blackwood had connections, politicians, judges, police. The system that was supposed to protect them was stacked against them. The final blow came on a cold November night. Marcus was studying in his room when he heard his mother scream. He ran downstairs to find the restaurant in flames. His father had gone back inside to save the family recipes, the photographs, anything he could carry. Marcus tried to follow, but firefighters held him back. He watched, helpless, as the building collapsed. They pulled his father out 20 minutes later. David Chen died in the ambulance, Marcus holding his hand. The fire marshal ruled it an electrical fire. Faulty wiring, but Marcus knew. He had seen the broken back door, had smelled the accelerant. When he tried to tell the police, they dismissed him as a traumatized kid looking for someone to blame. Blackwood sent flowers to the funeral. The card read, "My condolences. Perhaps now your family can move forward." Marcus's mother never recovered. The shock, the grief, the loss of everything they'd built, it broke something in her. She died 6 months later from what the doctors called a stroke, but Marcus knew it was a broken heart. At 17, Marcus Chen was alone in the world with nothing but rage and a promise he'd made at his parents' graves. Richard Blackwood would pay. The long game revenge, Marcus learned, required patience. It required becoming something more than the angry kid he'd been. So he buried his grief, buried his rage, and focused. He worked 3 jobs to put himself through community college, then transferred to NYU on a scholarship. He studied business and finance not because he loved it, but because he needed to understand Blackwood's world. He needed to learn how men like Blackwood operated, how they built their empires, how they crushed people like his parents. He graduated top of his class and got into Wharton for his MBA. He networked relentlessly, building connections with the same kind of powerful people Blackwood knew. He worked at prestigious firms, learned from the best, and slowly, methodically, built his own fortune in tech investments. All the while, he watched Blackwood. He studied every deal, every property, every business move. He learned Blackwood's patterns, his weaknesses, his secrets. Blackwood Development had grown massive. The man was now worth billions, with projects across the country. He was untouchable, or so he thought, but Marcus had learned something important. Every empire has cracks. You just have to know where to look. The first move, Marcus's opportunity, came 15 years after his father's death. Blackwood Development was pursuing its biggest project yet, a massive waterfront development in Seattle worth $2 billion. It was Blackwood's signature play: buy up properties cheaply, use political connections to get zoning changes, then flip everything for massive profits. Marcus had done his homework. He knew Blackwood had overextended himself on this deal, had taken on massive debt with the assumption that certain permits would come through. He also knew something Blackwood didn't. The city councilwoman who was supposed to approve the permits had a gambling problem. Marcus paid off her debts anonymously, and in return, she voted against the development. The permits were denied. Blackwood's project stalled. His investors got nervous. Stock prices dropped. It was just the beginning. The unraveling over the next 3 years, Marcus systematically dismantled Blackwood's empire. He was careful, patient, never leaving fingerprints. He identified Blackwood's most profitable properties and quietly bought them out through shell corporations whenever they came on the market. He used his connections to block Blackwood's permits and approvals in key cities. He hired investigators who uncovered proof of the bribery and intimidation Blackwood had used for decades, and leaked it to the press at strategic moments. Each blow was calculated, each loss designed to hurt. Marcus wasn't interested in destroying Blackwood quickly. He wanted him to suffer, to watch everything he'd built crumble slowly, to feel the same helplessness Marcus's father had felt. Blackwood fought back, of course. He sued, he threatened, he used every dirty trick he'd perfected over the years. But he was fighting an invisible enemy. He had no idea who was behind his misfortunes. His marriage collapsed under the stress. His son, who'd been groomed to take over the business, wanted nothing to do with him anymore. Board members turned against him. Partners abandoned ship. Finally, the banks came calling. Blackwood Development filed for bankruptcy. The revelation: Marcus arranged the final meeting at a restaurant in Chen's garden, rebuilt on the same spot where his parents had died. He'd bought the property years ago through one of his corporations and restored it exactly as it had been. When Blackwood walked in, confused by the invitation from an interested investor, he stopped cold. He was 70 now, his face gaunt, his expensive suit hanging loose on his diminished frame. "You remember this place?" Marcus asked from a corner booth. Blackwood's eyes widened as recognition slowly dawned. "You're the Chen boy. Have a seat, Mr. Blackwood." The old man sat, and Marcus saw fear in his eyes for the first time. 20 years ago, you destroyed my family," Marcus said quietly. "You murdered my father and broke my mother's heart because they wouldn't sell their home. You used your money and power to crush people who couldn't fight back. That was business." Blackwood said weakly, "Nothing personal." "It was everything personal," Marcus replied. "And now you've lost everything. Your company, your reputation, your family, everything you spent your life building." Blackwood's hands trembled. "What do you want? Money? I can get money." "I don't want your money. I wanted you to know what it feels like, to lose everything, to be powerless, to watch your world burn and not be able to stop it." Marcus stood and dropped a folder on the table. Inside were documents, proof of every crime Blackwood had committed, every bribe, every intimidation, every life he'd ruined, including the truth about the fire that killed David Chen. "The police will receive copies tomorrow," Marcus said. "You'll spend what's left of your life in prison." Blackwood looked up at him with hollow eyes. Was it worth it, all these years? Marcus paused at the door. He'd imagined this moment 1,000 times, had thought he'd feel satisfaction, vindication, peace. But all he felt was empty. No, he admitted, but it was necessary. Epilogue: Marcus never went back to Chen's garden after that night. He donated the property to a community organization that turned it into a center for immigrant families, offering free legal services and support. He established a foundation in his parents' names, helping small business owners protect themselves from predatory developers. He used his wealth and connections to change laws, to hold powerful people accountable. Blackwood was convicted and sent to prison. He died there 3 years later. Marcus thought about visiting him, about seeking some final confrontation or closure. But he didn't. The revenge was complete, but it hadn't healed the wound. Nothing would bring his parents back. He learned that vengeance could be served cold and methodical, could be achieved with patience and planning. But he also learned that even perfect revenge doesn't fill the emptiness left by loss. On the 20th anniversary of his father's death, Marcus stood at his parents' graves once more. He'd fulfilled his promise, but the cost had been 20 years of his life consumed by anger and purpose, rather than living. "I'm done now," he told them. "I hope you can rest, and I hope I can learn to as well." As he walked away from the cemetery, Marcus Chen finally allowed himself to think about something he hadn't considered in 20 years, what he wanted his own life to be, separate from revenge. It was a start.